Hi everyone, we're going to be talking about clustering in Lilac today. Now, clustering is a feature that we just added that lets you organize your data in an automatic way that gives you a feel for the shape of that data. Now, once you've organized your data into these buckets, you can actually use those to curate your data in a much more organized way. We are also announcing the Lilac Garden, which is our hosted, accelerated compute platform that lets you do common dataset transformations in a much, much faster way, up to 100 times faster. Now, we have a blog post and all sorts of documentation about this on our site and a waitlist if you're interested in doing this on your own data. And so what we're going to do is just jump into a data set that we've already clustered inside of Lilac Garden. And we're going to take a look at the OpenOrca dataset. Now, this is a dataset of about 4 million interactions with GPT. And if we want to understand these 4 million, we could obviously arrow through them, but that is not a great way to get a sense for that. So we're actually just going to go ahead and click this button here, which says Open Clusters, and we're going to take a look at the cluster view, which again are pre-computed for OpenOrca. And this is going to give us almost like a report card of our data set that tells us things like, well, your data contains about 7% of translation requests. This can be broken down into smaller things like, more generically translation requests or specifically English to Czech, which we can tell is about 15,000 rows in our data. Now we can arrow through all of these clusters to see things like English to Persian and so on and so forth with, movie reviews, movie questions, and so on. We can actually open one of these clusters and see the individual results. So we can see that somebody's asking, this question here, and it's asked to be translated to Czech. Okay, so that's what clusters can do for us. Now we're actually going to go through the process of running this on a data set and curate that data set in such a way that is aided by the clusters. And so what we're going to do is look at the glaive function calling dataset. And this dataset is a dataset that is users asking an assistant to make calls off to some function to go and do something. Now, the first thing we'll notice about this dataset is that it is just a string, right? So it's just user saying something, assistant in all caps saying, hey, I'm going to make a function call to get news headlines. So this isn't great. But I've gone and just processed this data set into a ShareGPT version of this. Now, ShareGPT is just a specific format that is an array of these structs where we have a from field and a value. And the from can take system, which is just the prefix in a way. It can take a human or it can take a GPT, which is the response here. And in this data set, it can also take a tool, which is the call off to the function. Details are actually not super important, but what we're going to do is start with this data set and we're going to cluster it from here. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut the screen in half and open our IPython notebook. And I'm just going to go ahead and restart this kernel and run these 3 lines, which are going to set our project directory to just a new project, which is here. I'm just going to hide this off. And start a server. And so once we start a server, we can see that refresh, we have a brand new Lilac instance, no data sets. Okay, great. So I'm going to take that data set we just talked about from before, and we're going to call ll.fromHuggingFace, which is going to take this Hugging Face data set and create a Lilac version of it locally. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this cell. And once that's done downloading the data set, we can go over here and refresh, and we'll see that we have this new data set. Now let's just go ahead and check it out. So we'll see that we have the original chat and system, but we'll now also have this conversation ShareGPT format, which we've rendered nicely with these headers of system, human, and GPT. You can see that it's some prefix, a human saying, can you order me a pizza? And the GPT saying, actually, I cannot. Okay. Great. So now this button is disabled because we actually haven't computed clusters yet. And so let's go ahead and actually compute clusters. Let's go pop back over to our IPython notebook. And we're going to actually just run this one line of code that is dataset.cluster. The input here is a format specific identifier that says we just want to talk about the human field, because we actually just want to format the cluster the requests here. So only the things that humans are asking for. We don't care about the responses yet. We're going to set an output path. This is whatever you'd like, just a string. I've formatted it to be just conversations under cluster. And use garden is a bit that we can set that says, please use the accelerated Lilac Garden platform to run this clustering algorithm. Now, you have to have a API key from us to set this, and we have a waitlist for you to get on to join and get an API key from us. But for now, I actually have one locally, so I'll just set use garden true. This data sets 100,000 rows. If I were to run this with use garden false on my M2, a sort of newer machine, this is going to take us about 24 hours. And this is a very optimized pipeline already. Once we switch this to true, we run this on our GPU accelerator endpoint. This will run much, much faster. So let's just go ahead and run that. So this will go ahead and start computing things, sending data off to our server and compute clusters. And so this should take about 5 minutes. All right, now that clusters have been computing, which you can tell took about 5 minutes, we can go back over to our UI and we'll just go to the homepage of our dataset, and you'll see that this button should now be enabled. Let's go ahead and click on it. And what we're going to see is that we have a bunch of clusters computed. There are things like city services, pizza and stock prices, financial management, and so on and so forth. If we go ahead and click on one of these, which is 7,000 rows about ordering pizza requests, we can see a cluster in detail. And let's go and actually just poke through a couple of these ordering pizza requests. And you'll see that a human asks, can you order a pizza from me? And it says, I can't. And if we keep erroring through, we're going to see that the user is asking lots of questions about ordering a pizza, and it just says, I can't answer that. And so that's about 7% of our data set of this 100,000, which seems like a waste. So let's go ahead and drop most of this cluster, leaving only about 10 examples so that we do still understand something about this type of request, but we don't need 7,000 of them. Of course, we can keep doing this for all the different clusters, but let's just keep this focused for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to this button that says label all items in the current filter, which is going to attach a label to these 7,000, and we'll just make up a new label called drop. And it'll ask us, do you want to drop these? And we say yes. And great. Now we've added these 7,000 labels of drop, and we can just make sure that they're enabled on all of them. Great. Now let's undo that drop label for the first 10, just so that we have a few remaining. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that and just keep that process going for these. And I'm just erroring now. Okay, let's do that for this 10. Okay, great. Now what we're going to do is go back to our IPython notebook. And we're going to just say export a Hugging Face data, but please exclude all rows with this label drop that we've added here. And I'm just going to print the data set just to make sure it's doing the right thing. All right, we can see that the Hugging Face data set is being generated. I just printed the first row just so we understand something about it. Okay, good. It looks correct. Now what we're going to do is publish this to the hub. And that's just this one-liner here, which is going to go ahead and actually just publish this to a new data set on the Hugging Face hub. Okay, so we have gone and loaded a data set. We've clustered it. We've found a cluster we don't like. We've gone and dropped a subset of that, and we've exported it back out to Hugging Face. And so now you can see how this massively speeds up the process of curating a data set. and it also gives you a feel for what's actually inside of it. So I encourage you to go check out our docs on clustering, and if the Lilac Garden is interesting to you, please go and sign up on our mailing list, and we'll be giving people tokens for as fast as we can. Thank you very much. Bye.